Welcome to this month's Fire Chief's video message. Today, I have Battalion Chief Kevin Frazier with me from Fire and Explosive Investigations. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Chief, for having me.
So obviously you were slated to be last month and Emily was here in your place. It's actually worked out pretty uniquely that the events in the last couple of days overseas has made your presence here pretty timely. So can you talk about the occurrences in Paris and the activities and how that impacts us and what our folks should be thinking about?
So we're just a few days away from the attacks that we had in Paris. Very serious terrorist attacks there that the world has seen. And from the fire and explosive investigation side, we've been involved with preparing for these type of situations for some time with our bomb squad response. With Montgomery County Fire and Rescue being so close to the Washington metropolitan area, Washington, D.C., the center of government, we all have to be vigilant for these type of situations and evaluate what's going on overseas, what may occur here in the United States, and be prepared for that.
And what is the element of strongest concern, or what is the focus of targeting that law enforcement is generally looking at these types of attacks?
So what we saw in Paris is that the terrorists targeted soft targets, areas that weren't protected. And so these are areas that we're most concerned about. And we need everyone's help to evaluate their surroundings to protect ourselves from these type of events.
And a soft target is generally described as a gathering of citizens that
gathering of citizens in an area that might not have the protections that we see in some of the hardened targets in the Washington metropolitan area, which maybe the Pentagon or the White House might be a hardened target, but in a soft target, we're looking for areas that might not have the security protections as we see in those harder targets.
So mass gatherings, football stadiums, any type of sports arena, theaters, things where there's a large gathering of residents and citizens in a casual environment without any type of security measures in place. And I believe we all saw that the NFL, as an example, changed some of their approaches this weekend dealing with those types of mass gatherings, soft targets, and that focus on individual security as folks enter the games and as such. And I think we'll see that continue for a period to come. But that's a element and a example of a soft target.
Absolutely.
What is it that the department can do, and what are the actions that FEI as well as Special Operations has been engaged with for preparing for events like this?
So since my move over to Special Operations with Fire and Explosive Investigations, I've seen some of the strong efforts that the Special Ops staff, Chief Witt and Battalion Chief Ogren, have put together for intelligence reporting. See something, say something, SAR reporting initiatives in the department. They've had very strong relationships with the county police as well as some of the federal partners in the local area to report suspicious activity and to try to determine what the suspicious activity is about.
So what is an example of suspicious activity that personnel in the stations, personnel going about their off-duty hours should report, should be triggering themselves to report and see something, say something?
So what we try to use is the 7 signs of terrorism. So we have first surveillance. So if we see somebody surveilling an area that may be out of place, that might be something we report. Elicitation, some of these events, the terrorists might use eliciting practices to find out operational things that departments may do, so that's one of them. Testing security is another one, so if they're testing security, we want to report that. Acquiring supplies, suspicious persons, maybe that might be odd behavior in an area, that might be odd questioning, dry runs, and then deploying assets. So those are the real 7 signs of terrorism that we try to focus on when we're completing our SAR reporting. And the most important thing with SAR reporting is details. It's very important that if our members, our personnel are out, that if they see these activities, to try to get as much detail as possible. Whether it's a description of the person, a description of the vehicle, any detail is important. No detail is too small.
And details are dovetailed right along with timeliness and the urgency by which that information is processed forward and moved on to an investigative unit for examination, because that is the post 9/11 key of connecting the dots to see what that may be. While it may be suspicious, it may not be illegal, or it may not be anything of concern, but until you connect those dots. Our folks, as you said, with special operations, have a pretty robust capability. Pound FRS.SAR for suspicious activity reporting. Any member of our department who has a concern about something that they see, when they have their details captured, send an email to poundfrs.sar@montgomerycountymd.gov. And that's an email distribution list that is established to hit multiple points, both fire rescue and county police, concurrently, so that the information is shared, rapidly reacted to, and pushed forward and engaged, with our lead capability being the folks in your unit to jump on some type of information or some type of lead and then tie that into the folks from the Special Investigative Division from the county police. So FRS.SAR, and soon to be a WUFU site, as we would refer to the process where you can provide more of those details in a format. So definitely see something, say something is critical. Now, station apparatus and security. Can you expand on what the importance of that is?
It's extremely important. Last night we had an incident in Germany that potentially may have used an ambulance or an ambulance-looking vehicle. That was reported, so those intelligence reports have been tracked down today. But it reflects on that it as a public safety responder in Montgomery County, that we need to have apparatus security and station security in place at all times, so our vehicles, our stations are not involved in any of these terrorism events.
And we have a couple different things in place. The Fire Chief's General Order on station and apparatus security, the message and order about reporting lost components, because if you lose your PPE or if you lose your uniform components out of your vehicle as a break-in type scenario, that's a loss, police report, but that's also something that can be used towards these 7 signs. And we need to, and we do, report that to the fusion centers or the right law enforcement entities, and components of that get synchronized together and see if there's a pattern or trend. So everybody needs to refer to the appropriate 2 general orders and general safety consciousness. You lock your car up so that people don't take anything out of your car. When all possible, lock your apparatus up and maintain people with your apparatus to prevent somebody from being able to steal the apparatus or steal some of the critical components off of the apparatus. So Lebanon before Germany and Paris, there will be something, after Paris, there will be this continual threat, and it's not a if, it's a when. Our folks really need to understand that it's a when will this come to us or come to the United States after 9/11 and an example. So always be vigilant, always be aware, and always be ready. So you had wanted to come on to the video to talk about FEI and the work unit. So what does FEI do, and what are the primary work functions of the investigators in fire and explosive investigations?
In fire and explosive investigations, we've been around since the late 70s, early 80s, and we've been a primary role player in Montgomery County Fire and Rescue in determining the cause and origin of fires in Montgomery County. That's not to say that all of our members have some responsibility to the origin and cause responsibilities of Montgomery County Fire Rescue. If we don't know what our fire causes are in the county, then we can't put our prevention resources in place to deter the fires or decrease the number of fires that we're responding to.
So what is the first step, or who are the first players and participants in obtaining information towards the origin and then potential cause of a fire?
The first members of our department that are involved with any fire is our dispatchers. Our dispatchers do an excellent job of gathering information from the witnesses or the victims or the homeowners of a fire, property owners, or potentially sometimes the 911 caller may even be the suspect in a fire setting event. The dispatchers are excellent in forwarding that information over to fire investigators. So we encourage any of that information if a dispatcher is speaking to someone on the phone and maybe some of the information might be valuable to the fire investigators, that information is quickly sent over via either phone or message to the on-duty fire investigators so they can utilize that in their investigative process.
So once our folks are on the scene, what element and what are the key information that they can provide for the investigators' later arrival?
So our operations personnel play a huge role in these fire investigations for us. First, their response, their vigilance in their response and their observations in their response can assist us greatly. They can maybe see individuals that have been on multiple fires during their shift or over the last few weeks or months. They may see similar vehicles. And all of that information is so important to relay to a fire investigator so we could track down that information, just as we discussed with some of the terrorism discussion that we just had. It's important to also relay any observations or on-scene suspicious activities around a fire to a fire investigator so we can track that stuff down as well.
Right. So there's a tool out there on quick links and informants and documents that all of our folks, and specifically all of our unit officers, should be uniquely aware of as it relates to a fire investigator. Can you describe that?
That flowchart was put together some time ago. It's Do I Need a Fire Investigator flowchart. It's easily found on quick links. And it goes over when to call for a fire investigator. It really has multiple flows for different events. Just recently, over the last year, we've started to dispatch our fire investigators on RID dispatches. So we have fire investigators dispatched earlier in incidents now, and that's not to say that the incident commander can't place them in service, but it also ensures that any incident that has a working fire or a RID dispatch, that we now have fire investigators responding to that.
So clearly, fire and origin determination, or O&C, is a part of what your unit does. What else does fire and explosive investigation, or what does the E in FEI articulate?
So Montgomery County is a certified FBI bomb squad. There's about 450 certified bomb squads in the United States. We're one of the few that is in underneath of a fire department. Most of those are under law enforcement. So we have a very significant responsibility to investigate explosions and as well as render safe explosive devices in Montgomery County.
So each member of the unit is, after they've obtained their initial certification and their field training component in the office, is then sent to the FBI hazardous device school for the ability to become a bomb tech. And so each member in the unit is a bomb tech itself and has capabilities of doing initial assessments, or does it have to wait for the bomb squad or the big truck to come?
So Montgomery County, our fire investigators, most of us now are certified bomb technicians. We try to get all of our staff through the FBI Hazardous Devices School in Huntsville, Alabama, and that's a 6-week program that we go to, as well as we have refreshers every 3 years with the Hazardous Devices School. And then there's other classes that we go to. As for response, most of our fire investigators have a full complement of equipment in their satellite vehicles, and they're able to start the process of threat assessment and mitigation or stabilization, if it so be, for a suspicious package or an explosive device. As the event unfolds, if we have more significant information or if we develop from diagnostic evaluation that we may have something more significant, what we do is then we have the full bomb squad respond as well as the large truck. So you may see different response assets for different calls that we respond to.
Good deal. One of the things that some of the folks within the department don't know is what are the requirements, what is the process if they're interested in, or if they want to become interested in, becoming a fire investigator. What would they have to do, and what's the level that they need to achieve?
So we get this call often in the office. I've talked to multiple members of our department about this. So first, to become a fire investigator, we have to have an open position, and those are announced through the PCAP process. It's important to, if you are interested in fire investigations in your career, is to start documenting all of your training that might be associated with fire investigations. There's many opportunities out there to take fire investigative classes, whether it's online or if it's straight classroom. Another area that sometimes people often forget is to document the number of fires you've been on. Have you been involved with the origin and cause? When we interview people, we often ask that question, how many fires have you been on? And to elaborate on what you've been involved with and what sort of ONC. Nothing is too small. Even for the adaptive, for the smoking wall outlet. You know, those are things that you're starting the process of learning how to determine what started a fire. And you look at those things and you put them in play, and that starts your career towards being a fire investigator in Montgomery County.
So today that means the positions are lieutenants and captains within the office. So that's a rank of achievement that has to be attained first. You have to be a lieutenant with the opportunity to lateral into the office, correct?
That is correct.
All right, and then once you're selected to be in the office, what is the next level of training before you are, in essence, cut loose and on the street as a fire investigator?
So the first training program you're going to go to is the Montgomery County Police Academy. So you have to be prepared for that and physically fit to go through the 6 months of grueling work in the academy. Most of our investigators find that very rewarding in their careers and look back on it as a very special time, however very difficult. After that, you have to go through the Maryland Police Training Commission field training program. That is a month or two that we go through. And then after that, we go into our origin and cause classes, either with the ATF or some private agencies. And then after about 18 months is the window we usually see that we are able to get members to the Hazardous Devices School in Huntsville, Alabama. So it is a very timely initiative, and it is rigorous, and there are many hurdles to go through to be a fully certified FEI staff member.
So clearly the on-duty shift of FEI folks, 2 or 3 personnel at all times, provides a great capability to the department, both from fire investigations and origin and cause, as well as suspicious package and any type of explosive component reactivity and response. So good information that I appreciate you bringing to the table today. As a guest to the table, naturally I ask each guest to come with a question, poll your co-workers and the such. What type of question do you have for me today?
So I alluded to earlier that FEI has moved under Special Operations Assistant Chief Witt. You've been an advocate of this change for some time. So the question is, what benefits do you see from moving FEI to Special Operations?
The roles, and you talked about it, we talked about it, how FEI deals with hazardous devices, how FEI has a role with dynamic events, and how that lands within our organization under the Special Operations section on incident response. But there's a lot of parallelism between hazardous materials, or the hazmat team, and FEI. Obviously, hazmat supports FEI in some operations. Some of these events are robot and hazmat tech joint activities. So because of that parallel component, because of similar training requirements between some of the units, there is the synergy of bringing those work units together and having that capability to one unit, being the Special Operations section. There is such value between SOD, the County Police Special Operations Division, and Fire Rescue Special Operations Section, to being the organizations that support both agencies' role in any type of dynamic event, special event, unique event, and anything that we don't fit into another box, we fit into that box. So that's been long going. That dates back to a little before 2009, when some of the activities changed in SOD and special ops. And I do see that there's going to be a benefit of that group being all together now going forward, and hopefully that the field personnel on the apparatus see no difference, because they shouldn't, and we see benefits of coordination and support to the work units and the individual parts going forward. So good question, and I appreciate the opportunity to explain what we've been working on for a while to get going.
Thank you, sir.
So one of the things that I always try to capture, Paris's activities caused us to focus on some of that today, is acknowledgements and a message. And the unit itself is always busy. Is it from a arson, somebody burning a car, somebody burning mailboxes or the such? And just recently, in the past few weeks, we had a significant house fire in Germantown, it's 22's area, on Falcon Crest. The entire back of the house was on fire when 22 arrived. There was a adolescent male inside the house when the fire was observed. And through the work of Lieutenant Younghans and Captain Shackett the day of the fire, and followed up by Captain Ferguson and Lieutenant Sipe the day after the fire, some great investigative work was accomplished with support of some information provided by public school officials. And ultimately, 2 arrests were made for suspects in that activity for what was a very tragic fire to that residence, and is an example of excellent work from the FEI unit as a team. One shift had the fire, one shift had the information and lead the next day, had all 4 pulled together and combined, and successfully with the state's attorney's office developed information sufficient for prosecution after the arrest. And good work, and wanted to give kudos to those 4 folks, as well as everybody in the office, because every day there's something. There's folks in court today dealing with an event from several years back that will ultimately improve the safety of the community by having that type of prosecution and capability together. So my kudos this month are to the FEI members and all of the folks there for their hard work. So pass that on, please, when you get back. As we roll into the end of this taping, as I said earlier, there will be another event. The event may be overseas. It may be in the United States. Our folks need to be prepared with their basic skill and basic response capabilities. These events are mass casualty events. These events are high-risk, high-threat events. Always be protecting yourself, always operate to the highest safety factor you can, but understand our job is to protect lives, save lives, and as we do on a structure fire with a trapped occupant inside the house, we have to take an expanded risk. There's additional resources through county police as well as through special operations to support that, but understand these events are so dynamic that our first responders will be there and dealing with this long before the specialized units are able to arrive and assist. So see something, say something. Can't be overstated. It can't be stated enough. And always ensure that you're aware of your own safety and security as you go about your daily business. Take care until next month.